Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong and happy, physically and spiritually. Since the war started, we started giving tzedakah, and Gdel tzedakah shemakarev sagula, we're giving tzedakah now, and Mashiach should come now, take it from Miyad, mamish. We're saying a prayer, a pasuk from Tehillim, which is going to be directly related to the concept that we're going to speak about today. Toiv li teiras picho meyalfei zov v'chosef. The Torah of your mouth is better in my eyes than thousands of bars of gold and silver. The Rebbe would every year, Parshas Naso, if it fell after Matan Torah, after Shavuos, or during the Parsha of Parshas Naso, sometimes before Shavuos, would talk very, very much always about Torah. If it was after Shavuos, the Rebbe would speak about how we have to be completely renewed, reinvigorated, with a chayes chodosh. We just got the Torah again, fundas nai. So we're going to speak today about a concept which I'm sure we spoke about it before, because I believe this is one of the most important things that has to be discussed possibly. And that's the idea of derech eretz kodmo l'Torah. Respect for the Torah. Respect comes before the Torah. There's one meaning of derech eretz kodmo l'Torah, which means, like for example, etiquette, learning how to make your bed, tie your shoes. That comes like anushis. Like we say, lo'elamei adam yirei shemayim. You have to know certain basic things to be able to get on in life. But now I'm talking about derech eretz kodmo l'Torah. If you want Torah to be sustainable, if you want Torah to last, if you want it to have an everlasting foundation in the community, there must be derech eretz for the value, for the virtue of learning Torah. We have to see Torah as the most precious commodity. Torah is the best eschere, as your mother probably told you, or your grandmother. Torah is the best eschere, Torah is the best merchandise. So, how do we see it in today's Parsha? Immediately, and how the Parsha is connected to Matan Torah, is immediately the Parsha begins where it says that we should count Nasoi, we should count, I don't know what happened to my Chumash over here, we should count the Bnei Gershon, Gam Heim, also them. And Rashi says immediately, what does it mean? Oh, here it is, I'm sorry. The pasuk starts off the Parsha from the first pasuk. It says, Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Leimer, Hashem spoke to Moshe, Nasei Yisrael Bnei Gershon, Gam Heim. Take a census of the sons of Gershon, them as well. What does Rashi say? Them as well. At the end of last week's Parsha from Shvi, we counted the Bnei Kahos first, before Bnei Gershon. And this is unusual because Gershon is older than Kahos, and we always say that the Bechor takes precedence over everyone else. He gets more honor, he gets more respect. And on this there's a tremendous Medrash Rabbah, by Midbar Rabbah, on this week's Parsha, and it says like this. I'm going to read you what it says in the Medrash. And now we know what it means, Gam Heim. Gam Heim is Letoiv. The Medrash also says later that we use the word Nasei, means elevate. In other words, that the Bnei Gershon is also as Choshev as Kahos in a certain sense, but it's also Gam Heim in a way that they're lower, they come second, and Kahos is spoken about first. Why? Because they carry the Orim, which is going to be another specific mitzvah later on in this week's Parsha, even though we spoke about it last week, that it spoke about how the Leviim, Bnei Kahos, carry the Aron. But first, what does the Medrash say? Noses, Reish Bnei Gershon, V'goymer, Hadod, Chsiv. This is what it means. Yikori, Mipninim, V'chol Chafotzecha, Lo Torah is more precious. Oh, the pasuk says it's more precious than pearls, and nothing is equal to it. All the objects of a desire do not equal it. So, the Medrash says two things over here. Number one, Chacham koidem lemelech. A sage, a Talmud Chacham, takes precedence over a king. Meis Chacham ein lanu kayetze boy. If a Chacham passes away, we don't have a replacement. He's irreplaceable, indispensable. Melech Yisrael Shames, but a king, a good administrator, Kol Yisrael Ruyin L'Malchus. Anybody can become a good leader, a good administrator, so to speak. So that's the beginning of the Medrash over there. And then it continues further. Mamzer, Talmud Chacham, even a Talmud Chacham was a Mamzer. A Mamzer is a child who was born from an illicit relationship. Mamzer, Talmud Chacham, Koidim L'Koyin Godel HaMa'aretz. A Talmud Chacham, even if he's a Mamzer, he takes precedence over the Koyin Godel. Shenema Yekorihi Mipninim. It's more precious than anything else. And then they learn a pshat, afilu mizeh shu nichnes lifnai v'lifnim. Even from the one who goes into the lifnai v'lifnim, the Kohen Gadol goes into the kodesh kodshim, which is the innermost sanctum, but still a Talmud Chacham Mamzer is more honorable, so to speak. And then it says, specifically related to our parsha, Dova ache yekorihi mipninim. How do we see that it's more precious than pearls? Medaber bekahos v'gershen. The pasuk is talking about kahos and gershen. Af al pi shegershen b'choir. Even though Gershon was the b'choir, he was the older one, born first. Umatzinu sheb'chol mokim chol hakakosim kavod l'b'choir. And we always find that the verse, the Torah, gives honor first to the firstborn. L'fi shahaya, but l'fi shahaya kahos toyin ha'oring. But since Kahas were the ones who carried the Torah, over here, we first made a census of the Bnei Kahas at the end of Parshas Bamidbar, and then Gamheim, then we count the Gershon. First, the Torah told us about counting the Bnei Kahas. So here we see in a real way, the Torah gives derech eretz to Kahos. First, why? Because they carry the Aron. And the Aron represents the whole focus, the whole preciousness, the whole uniqueness of Am Yisrael. There's a famous Lashon, I think it was the Rasag, who the Rebbe would quote, U'maneseinu einei umma el yaldei Torah. We're not just a nation. We're a Torah folk, a Torah nation. That means it's our essence. Yisrael, Eraisav, Kuchvirichu, Kulachad, we are one with Hashem. So now that's the beginning of the Parsha. And then later on in the Parsha, we have the Pasuk. It's one of the 613 commandments, where the Pasuk actually says that Levnei Kahos Lo Noson Ki Avodas HaKodesh Aleim Bakosev Yiso. That the Bnei Kahos were given a special holy service, and they carry the Aron on their shoulders. So, what's the idea of this mitzvah? So I'm going to read to you from the Chinuch, which, as we spoke many times, I believe the Chinuch has Mamish Rozi Torah, such important lessons that are just wild. Now, usually, I'm just going to take a pause over here. In Chassidus, when we talk about the concept of carrying the Aron on our shoulders, it goes into a story of the Gemara, Masechta Sotah actually, which we're going to mention the Gemara soon. Hold on, and then we'll take a break, a pause, to just discuss for a second what the Chassidus focus is on primarily. But today we're going to talk more practically. Now, what does the Chinuch write over here? The Chinuch writes that Shorshe HaMitzvah, what is the idea of the mitzvah? V'shekol ikar kvoiden sheYisrael hu HaTorah. The main honor of the Jewish nation is the Torah. Shabo nivdelu mishara amim. This is how we're different than all the other nations. V'nasu chelek Hashem, we became one with Hashem. Al kein ro'ui v'kosher losei soiso b'kisfei ha'noshim ha'nechbodim v'hamukdoshim shabonu. Therefore, the most holiest of us, Levim or Kohanim, I'm not getting into that right now, are the ones who have to carry it. In other words, we don't put it on a wagon which is inanimate. We don't put it on a wagon which is led by horses. It's put on the holiest of the people. Kohanim the Levim. Like we give special care and attention to it. And then he writes, "Ve'ein tzorich laharich b'muvan l'tinoike shel beis rabin." We don't have to elaborate with something which is understood by kinder from cheder, from kindergarten children that simple, they learn chumash, v'chulu, etc. Now, interestingly, this lashon where he says that we don't have to elaborate about something that's muvan l'tineka shel beis rabin. I'll read it again. Ve'ein tzorich laharich b'muvan l'tineka shel beis rabin. I find this so powerful. The chinuch is writing, and they say that the Sefer HaChinuch was written to the author's 13-year-old child. The father wanted to impress upon his son the importance of all the mitzvahs. When it comes to respect for Torah, the chinuch himself writes, we don't even have to talk about it. It's like so simple. It goes without saying. A culture, a community where Torah is not the number one priority, there's no way that we'll be able to inculcate and educate the youth with the proper values. It all starts that you have to have respect for the Torah and see the Torah as the most precious thing. And then he brings over here the story that happened with David HaMelech, and he brings also the Gemara, but let me just read it from the Gemara, which I believe the Chinuch was merames to the Gemara. So the story is like this. There's Gemara Masechta Soita, which is brought down in Igeres, in Kuntesach and Vav, David's Milas Kerisalahu. There's also a famous Hasidic discourse from the Tzemach Tzedek in Derech Tzesecha. And the Gemara says like this. What happened was, David HaMelech was bringing back the Aron from his capture from the Pelishtim, and he forgot that the Torah says over here in Parshas Naso that the Aron has to be not put into a wagon. He put the Aron in a wagon. As it was coming forward, the animals jolted a bit. It seemed like the Aron was slipping. Uzzah, a man by the name of Uzzah, came and tried to put it back so it shouldn't fall. Some people learn pshat. That itself was something wrong. I don't want to get into it now. In any case, he immediately died. He was stricken by Hashem. And this was a punishment that David should realize that through him, he caused the death of a person. And why? Because he put the urn in the wagon. And the Gemara says, why was David HaMelech punished? The Gemara says, the man nenish David, this is a Gemara in Soita, Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. The man nenish David, why was David punished? That the death of Uzzah happened through him. Because he called the Torah songs. And then the good lashon of the Gemara here is, and this is what I believe the Chinuch is alluding to, that since it's called Torah song, the Eibishter says, Hareini machshilcha b'davar sha'afilu tinoike shel beis rabin yoden oisei. You're going to be punished in something that even school children know about how to have proper respect for the Aron, which has the luchas. So, Chassidus asks two questions, which I'm not going to get into it now. Maybe we'll have to leave it for another time. Chassidus asks two very famous questions over here. First of all, what's the terrible punishment? What did he do wrong? Sorry. What did he do wrong? Did he call David's Midas Kerisalu? Did he call Torah song? I think every one of us would be very happy if our children or our students would say, Torah music to my ears. I love it. You understand? So what was so terrible that David HaMelech said, Zmiris Kerisalahu? That's one question. And the other famous question is, the Eibishter usually works in a way of Midah Keneged Midah. Why was his punishment forgetfulness? Because he called the Torah song, he was punished and he forgot. Okay, see Kuntras Achel and Vav, and the Maimer and Derech Tzesecha, Mitzvahs Masa'ar and Bekosef. We're going to have to leave that for another time. But let's talk practically. Practically, what is the lesson from all of this? So first of all, I want to continue with a lashon of the Rambam and the lashon of the Chinuch. First of all, practical thing, a lashon of the Rambam. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Sefer Torah, and he says that a ramification, a simple ramification from this mitzvah is mitzvah liyached. This is what he writes as halacha. It's a mitzvah to designate a special place for a Torah, for a Sefer Torah. That's why we have an aron in the shul. That aron that we have in the shul comes from this mitzvah of carrying the aron, not in a wagon. In other words, it has to have a special place. The whole idea of the aron is, wow, it's different. That's the focus. That's the concentration. That's the most beautiful part of the shul. That's what everything revolves around. That's what life is all about. Torah. And learning Torah. So the Rambam writes, mitzvah liyached. It's a mitzvah to designate a special place for a Torah scroll, or lechabdoi, to honor it, or lahadroi, and glorify it. Yosem midai. And they translated an expression, Yosem midai, in an extravagant manner. So this is amazing. Halacha and Rambam, now you understand why there's some shuls, they make an aron out of gold, out of silver. The halacha and Rambam is, lechabdoi lahadroi yosem midai. It's no limits. Why? Because this is the most precious thing you can imagine. And the lashon that Rambam here is mamish holy words. The Rambam writes, Dvarim shebeluches habris hein shebechol sefer v'sefer. Sometimes you look at the Rambam and you wonder, where did these words come from? And he says that the Dvarim shebeluches, the 10 Commandments, on every single Sefer Torah. In other words, what I believe that Rambam is alluding to is, just like when we had the Aron. So we had the Luches and the Shivrei Luches. In the Aron was something that was totally out of this world. Not of this world. It came from Hashem. We had it with us as we traveled. It was in the Aron. The Shivrei Luches, the Luches that were broken, and also the Luches. And the Rambam, I think, is alluding to that when he speaks about our Aron. In the Rambam Shul, he's saying when we look at our Aron, it's called the Aron Kodesh. Like the Aron, we have the Luchos, because we have the 10 Commandments that came from Hashem. So it's like in our Torah, we have the Luchos themselves. Listen to this lashon again. Dvarim shebeluchos habris, hein shebechol sefer v'sefer. And then he goes on to speak certain halachas. For example, v'leyachzar cherev Sefer Torah. You're not allowed to turn you back to a Sefer Torah. There's a Sikh from the Rebbe, in Chilik Chav Ches, I think it is, where he talks about this whole thing. And he also quotes, listen to this, the Chinuch ends off over here also with something very, very interesting. Besides for what I mentioned before, he just mentions the fact, V'zeh shenogu b'golus hayoim loheitzi Sefer Torah likras malchei umois. There's a custom that when a dignitary or a king comes to visit, we go towards them with a Sefer Torah. Ein zeh b'chiv mitzvah zu klal. It's not part of the obligation of the mitzvah. Shekol b'nei Yisrael shuim lisa isa. You don't need dafka, someone from Shevet Levi, to carry it towards the king. But v'im miderech kveda Torah yivcheru gam hayom sheyisim b'nei Levi tov aleim bracha. The Chinuch writes, but if, for the honor of the Torah, they will choose today, he means today, 2025 including, if you're going to meet some dignitary, and you'll choose somebody from B'nai Levi to carry the Torah in symbolic fashion, connected to the mitzvah that only B'nai Levi or Kohanim carried the urn on their shoulders, Tovei aleim bracha, they should get a bracha. Anyways, so here we see how fundamental and essential it is for the Jewish community and the focus of a Jewish community to be that Torah, 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 Limudat Torah. It means the people that embody Torah, Rabbanim, teachers, Shevet Levi. Only a community that will stress the respect for Shevet Levi, for Rabbanim, for Torah scholarship. As we saw from the Medrash in the beginning, Mamzer Talmud Chacham is greater than a Kohen Gadol. And like the Torah over here gave precedence for Kahos over Gershon, because they are the ones that carry the Oren. And as the Medrash says, Chacham that passes away, we won't find another Chacham like that. Melech, you'll find another Melech. So this is what we have to impress upon our children and ourselves. Again and again, I'm talking to myself about how careful we have to be when it comes to talking about Rabbanim, talking about teachers, talking about B'nai Torah, Talmidei Chachamim, etc., etc. This is what the mitzvah means in a practical sense of Masa Aron B'Kosef, Koved HaTorah. Koved HaTorah means everything related to Torah. The learning of Torah, those that learn Torah, those that teach Torah. This is the most precious commodity and the most precious thing. That's what means, that's what we learn from this mitzvah. And I don't want to give examples, I don't like being negative, but people tell me stories about they go to some place, to some minyan, and they ask them to speak on the Shabbos, and they'll say, don't speak for more than 9 minutes. What? When you're watching your sports game, you say you don't want to watch it for more than 9 minutes? That's respect in general, to tell a Rav or a Talmud Chacham, don't speak for more than 9 minutes. And that's how much you give it. And then somebody says, yeah, but if you can't make your point across in 9 minutes, you can't do it at all, you don't know what you're doing. Are you for real? How will you expect our children and our grandchildren to look at Torah as the most precious commodity? This is my oxygen, if you say, don't speak for more than 9 minutes. And so on and so forth and so on and so forth. This is what's going on. And we have to, each one of us, I'm talking to myself, have to work on ourselves. We have to be fanatic about Koved Torah. If we'll be fanatic about Koved Torah, then it'll reverberate across the younger generations also. One more lesson which is very important about this, but it's getting late, is in my Morech Chassidus, it talks about the Mizbeach was the place where we daven, where we slaughter the animal soul. Adam ki yaklev mikem korban Hashem. It speaks all about that. And b'chol levavcha mish b'snei yitzarecha. And Chassidus talks about the different sorts of animals, az, keves, shor, whatever the story is. But then in some places, Chassidus talks about the mind is the kochi kochim. The mind is the holiest of holies. That's where the Torah resides. Your brain space is your Oren. And the mitzvah of Koved Torah is that the Torah, because of respect for the Torah, warrants a special place. What's the special place for the Torah? Your mind. And by Chabad, Chassidim, and the Rebbe's answers to people, always again and again, was fill up your brain space with Oisis HaTorah, Oisis HaTfilah. And I've hit in the cup, guard your brains, guard your brain space. There used to be an advertisement 40 years ago in America for an organization, and the catchphrase was, a brain is a terrible thing to waste. Yeah, Reish is the Reish that leads the whole body. Chabad, Chochmah, Bina, Das is about mental health. What's the real mental health? The real mental health is when you fill up your brain space with the right perspectives, but it's got to be filled up that it doesn't leave room for other things. And that's the pshat. This is what the Avodah is. The Avodah is, as much as we can, guard your brain space, that it should remain holy, that only it should be filled with Torah. And this is the best way to be able to protect yourself from who knows what's going on in the world today, and all sorts of craziness and crazy perspectives and crazy ideas. So when a person kocht sich in Torah, he fills his brain space with Mishnah, Oisis Neshama, and Tanya, Oisis Eisneshab Neshama, Oisis HaTorah v'Atfilah B'chlal. So then, as the Rebbe says, many answers to people, through that, you bring light to yourself and you illuminate your surroundings. There's another word from the Friedrich Rebbe that he said many times, in Apusta wer kriegt sich. where there's an emptiness, where there's a void, the creepy crawlies come about. When the pit is empty, automatically, because it's empty, snakes and scorpions are crawling there. So we have to fill up the space with oisis ha-Torah, oisis ha-tefillah, it shouldn't be a void. There shouldn't be a void which attracts who knows what. So the Rebbe should help that through our avodah of respecting the Torah properly, we should be zoicha to the Torah chadosh mititetzei, take it from a yad mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, your man in Melbourne.